Yes. Okay. Jonathan, you good?
Yes.
No, our first time. Okay, ready. We're not. Okay, let's jump in. Super like folks are here. I'm going to propose a little bit of an architecture to the afternoon. And so thinking what we do is that we start with round of introduction. I'd love to have Christy do a little bit of an intro dive into introduction. And then would like to kind of see the floor to point or to kind of talk to Christy yet. We'd love for her to provide some updates on kind of where we are from maybe over the last week or so. And then would like to take a little bit of time for folks to just step back and wrap our brains around our questions, the key topics that we want to dig into further today. So we can actually pause and give everybody a little bit of time to take a look at our frequently asked questions document as prompts of like, what do we need more information on or clarification, a little bit of time to talk with the shoulder partner. And then I'll put them just 2 rounds of Q&A. Does that sound right for this time together? Well, let's do this. So let's start with introduction. So how about just maybe name and role and of all the children, all right? And I'll start over this way and we can ask for you to do a little bit of so I'm Anna Cole,
Miles Cook, Rose Springs High School, Social Studies.
Dan Red, Cardinal Middle School, CLD.
Heather Howe, instructional facilitator in elementary school.
Alicia Grant, I'm at Roaring Fork High School. Right.
Autumn there. Stephanie Latt,
I'm Karen Field, I'm with CEA.
Hampshire, Riverview.
I'm kind of waiting. Jacob Wallace for Handicap Learner Board of Education.
My name is Chief Human Resources. Hi, I'm Tisha Coyne. I'm from the CFO here, and I'm just really excited to be working with you guys. It's been just kind of jump right in with all this, but I'm really excited. You know, I have a lot of background in just really pushing fiscal transparency, responsibility, accountability. And so this is really my passion work, and so it's really great that actually it's a fit with what I've done in my past. Really, I've worked with RE2 School District for 17 years, and then I worked with 2 municipal governments after that. One with the town of DePaul and one with the town of Carbondale. And so I've worked in municipal and public finance for schools for a long time. And I'm used to these kind of situations that end up unfortunately coming up sometimes. And you know, I just really I'm confident we're gonna move through it. But it is challenging. There's gonna be some challenging bumps in the road for sure. Yeah, no question about it. But really excited to start to work with you guys, all of you, individually and collectively as well. I mean, it's not really my style to stay behind the scenes and working and in my office, but it's been a necessity, just given the situation we have. Just to give everybody a brief update on where we're at with our health insurance is that after we distributed slides and we've been answering questions on the frequently asked questions list, which is great. I know Anna's going to be working on that today with everybody, and making sure that all the questions are answered on that list. Comprehensive list. So I'm really excited that there was a lot of people that were involved in that. So that was really great to see. And then this week we started working, we hired an actuarial consultant. And what they do is they're going to help us to determine the amount of losses potential amount of losses for certain, really refine that with the contracts and all the details and that kind of thing. And then also look at what do what's called de-risking the plan, meaning that we're gonna try to take the risk out of this plan so that we're gonna minimize our losses and make sure we know how much we're gonna owe from this situation, so that we can then determine, with the board and with all stakeholders, how we're gonna pay. That's kind of phase 2. But our actuarial consultants are very good at what they do. When I first came, I kind of think, I think it's kind of interesting that I was kind of thrown into an actuarial kind of role when we uncovered this health insurance situation even before I got here. It was uncovered, but I just want to make sure that we're getting really close to the numbers and having some experts move into that role, because that is really what they do. So, that gives us more confidence on that, and yeah, so that's about it. We're also working with Think Health, and they're supposed to provide us a different stop loss contract. So I'm not sure what that's gonna look like. So we're just making sure that we're leaving all stones unturned or turned, so that we know all the options moving forward. So yeah, that's where we're at there.
I have been so grateful for Christy's leadership and really looking forward to you all getting to work with her more carefully and closely as we work our way through this. I guess I just want to appreciate you for some here. As many of you know, there was no overlap between Christy and the former CFO. I think there's about hours here and there scattered, whereas the last time the CFO transition of overlap. So the experience, I think the integrity, the skill set that Christy has brought has been, I feel personally, like a real gift for us at this moment, that experience. And I'm just really grateful that as Christy finds through her analysis and learning, when there's an issue, that she is one of those people that I can feel as well. It's like, here's the problem, here's the 3 next steps, or here's the next steps. Here are our options, which I think is a lot of it's like one of the key things that we look for in leaders is those problem solvers. So really grateful for the work and trying to work through this together. Okay, so really the intent of this time, and I'm so grateful for the conversations we had last week at Classified and Certified IBD to refine kind of phase 1 decision-making processes. If you remember, in kind of the context of where we are right now, in our initial analyses, we are anticipating significant financial losses. And the decision point that we are at, because we don't make this decision soon, we don't get the opportunity to make is whether we stay with self-insurance through this year, or whether we pivot mid-year to the managed care plan immediately. And so in order to make that decision, as you all know, we are trying to share all the information that employees like and we can have right now. As you've heard from Christy, some of it is estimates that get to be better estimates, as we move through this. So we really want to make sure that employees are looking at all the things we're looking at and have the same information, so that we can get feedback and really gather feedback from our staff about their recommendations on this. We're really leveraging our representative leadership structure through certified, classified, and admin IBD in order to make this decision. And where we're hoping phase 1 will end with a recommendation to the board at the October 23rd meeting of whether we stay or we go. And so today is the first of 3 live, though the rest will be virtual kind of Q&A sessions for staff, so that you can hear responses and ask for clarification in person from Christy and Gloria and I. That's our intent, is to kind of feel where people are, what are the questions that need further answering or haven't been answered. What we'll do, well, and then I want to, then where we go from here is into phase 2. So we're going to reform our health insurance advisory committee with representation from certified, classified, IBD, board of education. that committee will then really lead some work into phase two decision-making, which is how we pay for whatever option we choose. Both options are gonna require additional funding beyond what we've allocated. And more than likely, more than what we have in unallocated reserves. And so what we plan to do for phase two is to, Christina, I was starting a list of all the areas that we think we can identify or pool or reallocate funding. And our goal in phase two will be to make a recommendation to the board to rank order those. Here's, the first $500,000 when we come, it should be pulled from here. Second, then this 200,000, then this million, then this, and that's gonna be the goal. And because that's what will then need to come before the board for, like a supplemental or amended budget to our health insurance fund. So that would be phase two. Phase three is more about kind of the normal work that I know that certain certified IBDs used to be in the space of projecting benefits, budgets, and then having conversation and trying to identify how we will head with salaries and benefits and kind of the traditional work we do through negotiation with looking at health insurance plans and premiums for 25 and 26. So that would actually be kind of the phase three of landing with kind of a plan for this year and kind of where we are in the big picture. Okay, so let's, 9%.
I've just been texting her, she said she was not in the lane to join us. She's a principal.
It's on if you go on YouTube and look for the channel,
Okay. It
Well,
used to be,
the principal,
used to be
allowed
after
to
participate on Google.
No.
we are not doing a Google Meet.
Okay.
It's live stream on the YouTube channel of the Roaring Fork School
Okay,
District.
but
So
if the principal's not here, they come.
Yes.
I mean, is there a way on this, actually,
Because she was told that she was supposed
to ask a question?
yeah, there's a chat right there, and I'm monitoring the chat
Oh, on YouTube?
on YouTube.
Okay, that worked. She just wanted that clarification.
So going to the channel should be able to get you. Cool.
Sounds like the sound is not very good, and it's hard to understand.
I am texting Jonathan on that matter right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, let's do this to orient ourselves to some of the questions that have been asked. If you have a computer and get to our frequently asked questions document, I think it would be helpful if folks just kind of get a sense of like what has been answered, because then we can push on clarifying questions or get more, what explanations have we already addressed, what can we dig into a little further. And this is not a publicly available, this is an employee access only website. And so if you go, you need to be logged into your Google. Right? And then you go on to our Roaring Fork School District, click on employee.
Or you can, if it's the document I'm looking at, you can just search your email or frequently asked questions, and then it came from you, Anna.
Okay,
So,
the notes that we issued.
perfect, thank you. Yeah, lots of ways to get there. If you're on the website, you can go to employees, go to resources, health insurance deliberation, that's our web page with all the information. If you haven't signed in, we can lay it out, and then you can sign it that way. Is everybody there? Okay, let's take like 2 or 3 minutes to familiarize yourselves with the document. Again, I have it open live, and so if there are questions that we ask that, like Christy Begonia, I don't have an answer to right now, we'll just add them I'm like down on page 8, I'll add some page numbers, but I will just add the questions there so that we can make sure we answer them. It's something we need to do a little research on. But why don't we take like 2 minutes, just familiarize yourself with some of the questions that are there. There's sticky notes, and then we'll just do a quick turn and talk, and then we'll do some rounds of questioning.
why don't we take a minute or two to just maybe grab a shoulder partner? Or if you need more time to read, do that, but maybe just a shoulder partner, the things that are coming up, things we want to make sure that we ask today. But just a little bit of time if you need some neighbor thought processing time. So let's take a few minutes for that, and then we'll just start some whip arounds and questions.
Yeah. Which is, it's not. It's not. And then you're off. Yeah. You don't know. It's just like, oh, look, you're like, no, that's. It's not, because
I can, it also says,
yeah, it's just. That's what seems it makes something. So then it's like, oh, yeah. Figure out. Same. Okay. Yeah. The general. Okay. Yeah.
no, I don't.
They keep. Yeah. It just needs to realize. Also talking about the supplemental budget, and I'm just try to look at it. Well, just like, are those one and the same or those totally different? I mean, because it seems like they, kind of cross over, like there's no. Yes. People that. And then we have somebody. Yeah, but it is.
Yeah, they bring it up to that's next year's negotiations. I think I see it.
As long as I've never. Healthcare. Well.
It showed up 3 times that I counted.
Oh,
Which I know. That's good. Well, because that's what I do. And if I also, because that's what I have to say. About. It's, it's not a role, it's no longer.
When I started. All everyone's all better.
And I was like.
I realized I'm all.
Yeah.
I heard you.
Yeah. And let's just jump in. Does that sound all right? And I'm thinking, We started last time here, so I'm wondering if like Heather and Jason, let's just start with your burning questions and we'll start with those and we'll just kind of work our way around and keep circling until we've run out of time or run out of steam or feel like we've gotten to the depths of what we can for this moment. Does that sound okay? And I guess I want to remind folks that are, if you're watching, that I think you can chat online. You can I know just about everybody here, except not me, somehow I left my phone somewhere. A lot of folks in here have their phones and are looking, so if you have, if you want to shoot questions to people, sure, you can do it on the chat, and of course, for our staff, the Google form is open, and when you add questions to that, they then get onto the frequently asked question form to get answered, so it's a little slower than getting it answered right now, but they are getting answered, so we're regularly updating that, so. And I think it's helpful, and I also know that it really matters to this team of representative leaders for you all to see the pulse of the questions and to see what people are asking and what those concerns are. So I know that you're reading it with those two lenses. So let's jump in, and Heather, if you want to get started, and then y'all can pass and we can keep going around if there's additional questions, but that's okay. Sure. Okay.
I think I have a question, just on the, it was like question 10 way up top. It just says like, is CEBT the only other option? Which is answered, but then it says we've reached out to other plans, but none can launch as quickly as CEBT and offers comparable rates mid-year. Would that mean that like, once we make the transition to CEBT, that we're good, we're staying with them, we are not gonna look at possibly other options non-mid-year that might be open, but at a lower cost? Or are we just saying we're locked in with them now?
Good question. That's a good question. You want to talk about it?
I can try it, if you guys would like, so CBT has agreed to, as a part of this quote that they provided to us, a 10% increase in rates for 25-26 if we continue with them. And I think that we plan to do that because what we're seeing with other districts and even within CBT is 20% increases. We're seeing some challenges in the health insurance industry right now. So the chances of us being able to garner a comparable plan for that same price are pretty slim, because the one quote we just got from Think Health was quoting us at about 35%, 30% higher than our current rate for like what they could do for a managed healthcare plan. So so while it's possible that we find something, I think in the short term it's not going to be probable. And it's something that we can look at over time, but I would say for 25-26, that perhaps the better way to go is to continue with CBT and not continue shifting, and then look and see what options they have with other plan designs to mitigate those costs for our employees, because they do have some options. And then also look at other ways we might be able to help control our costs in the short term.
Second, Jason Rowe. You can go around.
A question I have, and hopefully I'm understanding it correctly. If we stop and change over at the end of the year to CBT, is my understanding that we need to have like some kind of stopgap insurance to pay for losses that have yet to be paid out. If we were to stay with them through the end of our contract, would we still have to have that stopgap insurance, or would Think Health eat the end of those deals the same way that CEBT did when we switched over to Think Health?
That's a very good question. Thank you for that, Kenny. Yeah, Think Health would not eat those costs, and that was some of the maybe potential misunderstanding on how this would work, but they're not going to eat that cost. So we would, regardless of when or if we shift Think Health, we're going to have to look at stopgap coverage for those runoff claims.
Does that make a runout claim would be the medical bill you get after the plan has ended that wasn't submitted. Does that make sense? So let's say we ended, you went to the doctor June 15th, but you didn't get the bill, and then the plan, so we went to the doctor June 15th. We ended our healthcare plan June 30th, but we don't get the bill until July or August or September or October. That's a run out claim. And so we still need to pay for that. But the plan's over. Does that help? Please call out, like, if we're using language that feels like we don't actually know what that means. Yeah, Ken.
Clarifying. question, like,
Yeah,
would be the same stopgap insurance. Like if we switch from Think Health right now, that stopgap insurance that we've had this year, is that the same stopgap insurance because the billing date is the same, or is it when the bills received? Like we need new stopgap insurance in January if we switch to CBT for those one out Think Health claims.
Yeah, yeah, cause we, so that's part of the actuary's work. As far as determining if we're going to negotiate with our current stop loss carrier, or we're gonna ask for another quote from a different stop loss carrier. That's what the work that they're doing, but they're called incurred but not reported claims. So that we have to find some way to make sure that we mitigate the district's risk for those claims that are gonna be paid after January.
Is that, I know Valley View is not the health department. But is that something we could ask them, like, hey, this one time, could we get some bills? Or is it
like faster.
yeah, like just for this one changeover.
That would be amazing. I don't know that that's common practice.
Their HR director has a student.
Yeah, if we decide to break up with Think Health, you're spot on, Kendall, that like the current plan is, the current stop loss plan goes over 12 months. And so we would either have to revise that to 6 plus the run out, or end it completely and get a new one. And that is, you know, the new one comes with a lot of, like, a lot of questions with the carrier, like, well, how much are you spending? And so that's why the actuarial consultant can target more numbers around usage, and they look at historic data and give us a better sense of like, this is gonna be an appropriate coverage plan for you to mitigate risk. And so that's one of those like decision trees that if we go the route of breaking up with Think Health, we gotta solve for. And that, I mean, I would be honest, as we're trying to make our way through this is like one of the things that's been really great about having consultants and legal teams that specialize this, and they just have been there before. They're like, oh yeah, and then you would need to attend to this, and you need to attend to this, and so we'll have to make a plan for this and this and this, so that it does feel. I feel reassured working with these consultants and legal teams that like, this isn't, we're not the only team that's ever been in this space before, and there are steps that we take, but that's exactly one of the things we'll have to figure out.
I'll follow up on Kendall's question. Do we know, as the actuary, do they have a ballpark of what that insurance will cost? Like, is it gonna be a huge shocking number, or do we know what that generally looks like?
We don't know yet.
So would that potentially then change our decision to switch over if it's like really high cost insurance?
I mean, I think it'll be factored in, is, you know, what that would cost. I can tell you that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but the cost of the stop loss plan this year, which is more than last year, is about $750,000. Yeah. For 12 months, plus everything that they would say runs in. So all the bills we're getting now in October and somebody went to the doctor in June, because that plan ended in June and then the new plan kicked in. So the current plan, that's kind of what we're talking number wise, you know, for that kind of a plan, that's what it.
We don't know really exactly.
Yeah, you know, I mean, so they do what's called they being Think Health provide, and Lucid Health, our current carriers, provide what's called an IBNR number estimate. And what that number does is it tries to estimate how many claims potentially are out there as runout claims. And that number, the reason why we're looking at 1.9 million on those estimations is because that number is running about $2 million. And so we do have a good estimation of what that could look like. And so then we have to compare like what the actuary gets on their quote with the actual potential cost, and see what, you know, if it's worth that additional chunk of money.
Right.
Or we should just eat it, you
Yeah.
know, and then we incur that and we have more risk around it. But we also might be able to mitigate our costs, so it's really dependent upon, how expensive that's gonna be when the actuary determines that. On what, you know, what option we're gonna choose, but that number is gonna be out there regardless, we're always gonna have that run out claim number.
Right.
Until we, you know, de-risk the plan, so,
And when do we find out from the actuary?
we're gonna find out like by the 16th, I think, I mean, the 23rd.
Or the 23rd?
Yeah, we'll get kind of a draft, we'll get a draft report or a report from the actuary that will kind of put their assessment together. And so we'll definitely push that out to all of you.
Really important, yeah.
Because it'll help us. All the numbers we're working with right now, as you've seen on all the slide decks, like this is our estimate, this is our estimate. And I mean, it's been helpful, as Christy was saying, when she's kind of had to put on an actuarial hat, like in developing those estimates, it's. Everybody that we've talked to so far has been like, you're not that far off, and actually that's how we would do it, just maybe a little more data, a little more refined, so. We don't feel like we're completely off base, we just feel like we're gonna get a little tighter with what we can guess,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, thanks, Jack.
I don't think I-
Okay.
What we talked about, we don't know what we don't know, so we're limited in the scope of what we can ask, but. Not that we think a decision's already been made, but like that at the moment, when you look at it, the financially wise decision is to switch. Right, otherwise we're very over, like otherwise we're very overextended, right, and have a high loss. So I think some of what we're wondering is like, are there certain conditions that we're looking for that would swing us towards staying? Like, what would the types of information be that would indicate it's better to stay? And that's what I think we don't have a grasp of, that we're curious about. We understand that to switch right now in the moment should save a significant amount of money that we don't have ready to go, would have to come from somewhere. And keeps us out of scary other things. We do understand that. We don't understand under what conditions we stay with.
I think it's a great question. I feel like in a lot of ways, we're asking the same question with every consultant, like, and to be, the way it sounds when it comes out of my mouth is like, are we crazy? Or are we like asking the right question right now? You know, or is somebody gonna come back and be like, oh my gosh, all you have to do is da 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 da, and you're fine. And we're not hearing that yet. They're like, no, you need to look at this. This is serious. Let's dig in. Let's keep going. I guess I would say, and like Christy, we're going to push back or refine this, like. If I think the conditions would be, you know, if there was more of a like. Even though it's like a risk tolerance for us. I think if we, to be honest, if we had more in reserves that we were comfortable saying, you know what, that we got this 10 million, let's just like kind of not touch it, but like we have over the last 3 to 5 years really attacked in an aggressive way, which is fine. A high reserve balance. Meadowood is because of that. We've made those kinds of decisions. I would, if we were in a position where we had $25-30 million in reserves, unallocated reserves, I would feel more tolerant of some sort of risk and, you know, let's lean into this plan because it has this potential if we really get our employees to change behaviors and think differently, of saving some money. And if we felt like we had capacity and skill set on our team to do that. And if we felt like this is an area as an organization that we want to invest operational dollars in having a robust self-managed health insurance plan. I'm not hearing that, you know, and so I think those are the kinds of conditions that I think now at this moment would feel like, okay, you know, if we had people on our team and our operational teams who were like, oh, they managed a self-insurance plan, saved their company at millions of dollars. Awesome, we're gonna put them on this, we're gonna attack it, and the board's got, you know, has allocated 10 million of this reserves to provide this rainy day. We're not gonna touch that because we don't have other big priorities. So we're gonna let that sit there for that
once every 4 years or once every 10 years. Massive set of claims when we get, you know, something crazy and awful that happened to a family. I think those might be the kinds of conditions that I feel like we might feel differently. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, cause like, if you look, one example is if you dig into the contracts, which is not a fun place to go, it's not my favorite word, but. Is looking at those stop loss contracts is that they only pay up to $1 million on that maximum. So we could even set the risk at the highest level with our premiums and cover all of that maximum aggregate stop loss. To help mitigate those risks, but then if we climb over an extra million over that, then the district's on the hook again. So if we get a super bad year, we just don't have the funding to be able to absorb that risk. And so I agree with what you're saying. And that's the challenge with this kind of a plan, with the way our fund balance is set.
Does that kind of get at it?
On the personal side, I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
I would add, our personnel does not have the knowledge to start making those decisions. Valley View, it's the one that is driving our costs. We're gonna get Valley View completely out of coverage. And it is out of network, so people does not have that availability to go there anymore. We really don't wanna be neither in that position to be making those decisions, because while employees might say, oh, okay, I live closer to Grand Valley, I'm okay with that. There is another set of employees that we will affect greatly. If we're not ready to take those decisions.
It was an extra on question 6, like, I understand that if we change the plan now in January, and you already said that it will be like a 6-month plan, and they will go over it at the end of the year, right? Is that what the answer says in number 6 today? My concern is, like, I've been talking to a lot of international teachers, I'm a visa holder, for most of H-1B visa holders, when the spouse is not a teacher, they're H-4, that's a huge impact, their salaries at the end, of every month, so they're kind of worried about what would happen for these 6 months, if it's better for them maybe to go to an external insurance and then go back if we do it again in spring. But that would be the case if that changes, like it would be like a 6-month plan and then it would go again and it would change again.
That's a great question, Carlos, and I think, we've heard, I really appreciate the lens of our teachers who are on visas, because there's a different set of challenges because you name.
My wife's a teacher too, but I know other teachers.
100%, and it's a group of teachers that we really, we really care deeply about, because you also bring to our staff the lived experience that so many of our kids and families have, right? And so it's a really important component of our team. And I would say though, underneath that question is a root question that we're hearing a lot of, like, what's the impact going to be on our finances, like on my finances and my contributions? And so I want to make sure that I'm getting it right, because to me, that feels like that's a question that we're getting a lot. And, our goal in the way that we would make this transition in 2024-25 this school year is that we will do everything possible to not touch any changes on salaries or premium costs this year. So that wherever you're at, that is going to be flat, and the increased cost comes from elsewhere in the district, not the backs of employees. And we, again, I mean, like, is that one of the things that we would have to put on the rank order of phase 2 of like raising premiums? Maybe. But I can tell you right now that like this admin team, and there's nobody I've talked to that's not like that, is going to be like bottom of the bottom of where we should go here. And also to mention that like a lot of our employees have contracts, and so that is part of it. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to figure out how to pay for this without it changing salaries and employee contributions to benefits this year. I don't think that's going to be the case for 25-26. I think we are all going to see in the next school year, like increases to, we know it's going to be increases to premiums. I think we're going to have some hard work to do this
winter of when we look at that, if we go with CEBT, if we go with Think Health. When we start getting tight, we get through the 24-25. What are we doing right now? And we get into the like, okay, 25-26. What are the costs? How are we paying for it? Where's the 25-26 budget at? We know the costs are gonna be increased. We know they're gonna continue to rise. I don't feel as confident in saying that in 25-26 there won't be an increase of what we have to pay as employees to premiums. I guess that would be my answer, is that, we are gonna do everything possible to hold that dam back for 24-25, and then have a lot of conversations, especially through our negotiating work, to figure out how we pay for all, the increased costs next school year. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
To add a little bit, and if I understood your question correctly, we are talking about two different enrollments if we were to change, so people would enroll in November for coverage that goes January to June. And then probably April, May to start coverage one more time in July. At that point, everyone will be able to make the decision of, do I keep my family here? Do I find a different provider? What was that the question?
Yeah, I that's the question that I was like.
Okay.
So, but yes, that's that answer.
Okay, thank you.
My first question, loss of deductibles for mid-year cancellation. I just need clarification. I think that's question 10 on here somewhere. Question 5, question 1 also kind of talked about it. But it says deductibles reset in alignment with the calendar year. That's Think Health.
That has been
That's how we look at
historically,
it.
deductibles
Okay.
are always calendar year.
Okay, so nobody's gonna lose if they've met their deductible, that's gonna reset in January regardless of whether or not.
Regardless.
Okay, I just needed that clarification. If your kiddo has surgery December 29th, resets January 1st.
Oh, I had one of those things, I totally had Christmas break surgery.
No, thanks, Nina, that's an important clarification, yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying off that? That's on the circle.
Yeah.
When we switched from CBT to Think Health the first time, and that was a major switch to people's deductibles reset, you can tell I use my health insurance a lot.
No, they didn't. That was one of the concessions they made. Whatever, if you had already met your deductible as this switch happened in June, they respect that deductible.
But if we switch from Think Health to CBT next June, that might not be respected.
Well, they would be able to provide us a report that would honor the deductibles through June 30, but understandably, it's a bit messier because if somebody's deductibles don't quite come in, when we run the report, it can kind of cause a few issues with it. But that's why it is nicer to actually have this start January 1st. And the great thing that Begonia brought up as well is that everybody's gonna be here. So a mid-summer shift is really challenging because it's hard to get a hold of.
Let's keep going. It's Sarah, right?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
More.
No, I think I got it. So when we switch, we will just stay with the January deductible. I think that's what you guys just said. I just.
It's kind of, what would I say, like industry
Common practice,
standard
yeah.
with all health, yeah, so
Okay.
it would
So even
reset for
though
everybody.
our contract is June to June, our deductibles are July or.
Mhm. Yes.
Cool. I just wanted to make sure that
Yep,
that's reflected in our minutes.
thanks.
Just looking at question 1 that talked about the unallocated general fund balance, so I was just curious. What is I know the audit's not out yet, but do we have an unallocated general fund balance for 2024? Do you have a sense of what that number is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always something that shifts, that we get more information as we move forward. So you are correct. We don't have an audited ending fund balance for 2024. But Nathan had in the 2025 budget had estimated a $15.2 million ending fund balance. So that we're working off of, that can be found on page 4 of your budget. Okay. And it's under the general fund, ending fund balance, you'll see the 15.3, I think, million in there. And that'll be updated, when we get our audit finalized. We're probably gonna have some pre-audit, information available by end of November is what we're estimating. So, and then we'll have our audit, reported to us, actually in January this year. It's a little earlier than last year, but not as early as we wanted, but yeah, so that's where it's at. Now, when you look at the minimum fund balance, he also, estimated that, and that's close to 12.5 million. So we're really close to our minimum fund balance, okay? And the minimum fund balance is 10% of our revenues for the general fund, plus our required Tabor emergency reserves, which are 3%. And I consider that to be like a lower end of a reasonable fund balance, because you want to make sure that you have enough to continue moving the organization forward with the existing budget, even in the midst of potential cuts in a recession or something like that. So we want to be really thoughtful about the use of that fund balance moving forward. Does that make sense?
I think so. One more clarification. So I see for the 24-25 budget, that estimated ending fund balance of 15.3 said.
Yeah.
So is the estimate for the 24 school year still the 17.5-ish million, or are we thinking that will change now that new information is coming out?
Yeah, we don't have any new information from that. Catherine and myself and Shannon are still working through that. And that's kind of our like pre-audit work. And we're actually, that'll take probably another month and a half or so, we're hoping to complete.
Okay. And again, this is me just trying to catch up, so I appreciate it. So as of right now, because I was trying to look at the budget versus forecast for 2024 to just kind of understand like where and when you started to see this issue with health insurance costs. So are you estimating that the benefits costs that are in the 24 forecast and the 25 budget, those will probably change, or are you still, you haven't, not sure yet?
Yes, those will change. There's a health insurance fund, towards the end of the document. I don't have the actual page.
Page 26.
Page 26, okay.
If you're trying to follow along, question number 1 at the very top of the FAQs, I linked our district budget. If you go to that and open it up, we're on page 26. Yeah.
I'll give everybody a minute to get there. And then I can kind of walk through a little bit what we discovered. In this document.
You said on page 6.
26.
26.
So, and I know everybody's got a different knowledge base with financial statements, so we're gonna just break it down, so don't be intimidated by financials. Stay with me. Every non-math people are talking to you right now, right? So this is gonna be great. I just love to teach this stuff. So, so when you look at, there's the financial statement is that you've got a couple years of actuals, which obviously we weren't self-funded in 2021, 22, or 22, 23. So that makes sense. All those are zeros. So we started this in 2023, 24. And there was a budget and a forecast and a variance there, okay? And that's for our last fiscal year, okay? And at this particular moment in time, when this was a part of our 24-25 budget, we were estimating, if you look under the forecast, which is the middle column of 23-24, you'll look at our resources available of $9,055,000. You guys see that number? Okay. And that actually came out to be pretty close to accurate, okay? Where we got into problems is looking at our professional services number. That really is the number of our claims. That's really that 7,008,000 number. That's really our claim number. And unfortunately, there was a couple pieces that were missing here. Is number one, it didn't include any of our run out claims. Remember, I was telling you that was about another $2 million. That was not incorporated in here. Okay, and according to all the financial standards with the audit, we have to include those in our financial statements for this year. So that was one piece that was omitted. And then there was a second piece is that a lot of times when you start a self-funded plan, people don't start using that self-funded plan until later. So I think what happened was that, that the estimations were based upon numbers that were lower because it was the first time we were using the plan. And so that's how, when you look down at the revenue surplus deficit of 1,453,000 under that forecast number, that means we were estimating that we were gonna make $1.4 million. And well, actually, we didn't include our runoff claims. We actually probably understated what our total costs were. So that number is closer to a negative $2.3 million. So then when you pull that into your 24-25, on the top of the 24-25 column is the beginning fund balance of 1.4 million, which we thought we were going to have in savings. Instead, we have a loss that we have to pull from our general fund. Okay. And then on top of that, we were estimating our numbers on professional service, that $8.4 million in expenses off of prior year. But the problem is that we didn't include, again, that 2 months in there. So that's again, another $2 to $2.5 million low, because now we've got medical inflation on top of that. Okay, does that help?
Okay. And I would add the other component that we missed on expenditures, both in 23, 24, and 24, 25, is the cost of the stop loss insurance. So other expenditures is just the administrative costs that we pay to like Think Health, but the actual premiums that we pay for stop loss, we forgot them, they're not on here. And again, I don't remember the number exactly for 23, 24, but 24, 25, it's like 747,000. It's the premiums for this year's stop loss. So we also missed that on this budget.
Can I ask a clarifying question, because there's a question in your explanation? You're explaining things we've missed, a lot of things that have been missed, like the stop loss and this, and then I'm just gonna say it like the budget for GSHS. Do we think we've found everything now that's been missed, or are we gonna get hit with some more money in a month or 2 months of another bigger, like, oh, we missed this one, that's gonna really hit more? Have you had the time to really dive in to see if you found everything that's missing?
You know, I think that there was just a misunderstanding of insurance in this. So, you know, that was a challenge here. I think that when we're looking at, I think there's two components to that part. Is one is our process component, is looking at how to kind of break down our budgeting process for additional transparency and reducing complexity, even for me to understand. You know, a lot of these spreadsheets are really, they're deep dives, and so it's going to take some time for me to understand that thoroughly. But what our goal is as we're doing that, and no, I have not had time to really look into that. I'm doing the big chunks, you know, I'm staying what I'm talking to Anna and the board about is at like the $100 million level. And then I'm going to get down to the $10 million level. I'm still at that $100 million level. But what we're going to do as we're kind of starting this work is to pull out that the budget and add a little bit more transparency and summary reports for people to understand by admin unit and stuff like that as we move forward. So I think we're going to capture it, but it's going to take some time. Okay.
And I would just add that it has been frustrating you know, one of the things that Christy and some of you who were on the hiring committee, one of the tasks that we asked our CFO candidates to talk about was like a calendar and a budgeting calendar. And so in follow-up conversations, as Christy was onboarding, she and I talked a lot about like the, you know, our goals and what the calendars look like and the cadence. And I know we've been talking about that through IBB of like, we do this earlier, how can we do, you know, not be doing things at the last minute in March when our brains aren't even here. And we have a lot of alignment there, and it's been, I feel frustrated that a lot of, I mean, Christy's first couple of weeks have been going, what feels like, cleanup into things that were pre-existing, and that it's just gonna take more time to go through this. We're really looking forward to the audit, which is gonna happen in early December, and Christy's really supporting the team, which is, even that is moving it up. It's not the target that we had hoped for of moving it into October, which was our like gold star standard, but it's getting it sooner than it was last year. So we're trending in the right direction, but things are just taking longer. And that, you know, the purpose of that audit will be to be the final catch of what was all missed. And certainly as Christy's working with the team to prepare for that well in advance of when the auditors are here, that's why she was saying in those November numbers, we're hoping to have a clear understanding of 23-24, but it has been frustrating because I think we were both hoping that there would be more time for her to wrap her head into 24-25 now. But it feels like we're still kind of getting stuck cleaning up some of this work that's had dramatic influences on 24-25. And I think we're trying to readjust our own and all of our stakeholders' expectations around budget and how far we can get and how fast. Because of this work that is taking, and as it should, an incredible amount of time.
And I think that the positive part about that is that I'm getting a really good idea of like what you know, strategically, how strategically we can move the budget and the full finance, like what is operational excellence? What is financial excellence, and start to really ask those questions, you know, and look at that at a district level and be able to really refine this and move forward in a good direction. So I think that's the exciting work that we're hoping to get on the heels of this negativity. You know, it's like we just want to move out of this and into a really good spot so we can get back to our kids, you know, focus.
Christie, is just one more follow-up to that. I appreciate how you just explained that to us, and still sort of like grasp some of it and not other parts of it. Would it be possible to take this slide 20 on page 26 and like have another color added to that slide to like sort of fix that slide and show where we are at the present? Because like with all these different places, it's sort of hard to grasp and understand exactly where we are. So like, would it be possible to like take this and then have another color in each of those like cells saying where we really are at this point, or we're expected to be, to better understand that page?
Yeah, like highlight in red what's wrong or something.
Or just
And then, like,
highlight
with
in
the
red
actual
what the
numbers.
real number is at this point for each of those like places.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Christy's done it by scratch because I needed to see it. I was like, show me what we did wrong. She's like, here it is, right here. So yeah, I mean, and I would name, and it's funny, I was just gonna say this. As we move forward, we will have to amend and continue, as you know, folks are aware of the Glenwood Springs High School, the miss of that allocation in the 24-25 budget. We did a supplemental budget approval through the board. This will need to be amended formally with the board, and that page 26 is going to have a formal, proper piece. You know, and I will name, and I think maybe I'm jumping around, but while we're looking at this document, one of my, I think a lot of us are sitting with the like, how did we miss this? How did we not know? And one of my real lessons has been when I see words like forecast, I need to be and millions of dollars under something like that. The next question that should come out of my mouth is, what's the risk in that forecast, and how accurate are we on that forecast? It's one thing if we're talking $20,000, but if we're talking 1.5 and that's a forecast, like that, something that moving forward, I will red flag on a budget. Do you know, like, does that make sense? And I just name that for all of us, because this is one of those areas that I feel like, where could we have done better? Is like, we all should have a cue that's like, forecast is a guess. Great, what's the risk with that? What if we're wrong? And how wrong could we be? And what are the implications? Like, those are the questions I wish I had asked, looking at that page.
I have one more question, and to just kind of help me understand how the self-insured, you know, that health insurance fund interacts with the general fund and whatnot. So I was looking at page 8 of the budget that shows your general fund expenditures, and I'm seeing that benefits are about, I don't know, 35-ish% of like your salaries, which makes sense to me when I like put health insurance with other benefits like para, but I'm wondering, are the benefits on your general fund not including health insurance benefits because there's a health insurance fund for 2024? Just help me understand how those, does that question make sense?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's almost dual reported because we account for our claims under our health insurance fund. Okay, and then what we have to do is we separately set premiums for each employee. And then some of those employees operate within the general fund. Some of them are in the grant fund, some of them are in the food service fund. So then that's how that's charged through payroll. And so that's kind of how we get our premiums, and those premiums then are put into our health insurance fund to offset as a revenue, like kind of an internal revenue, if you will, for how we pay for those claims. Okay, so the expenditure almost like dual counted, just because we have to, the way we have to account for that, but it's in a separate fund, that health insurance fund. Does that make sense? Or there's one, okay.
All right, sorry.
No, you're fine. That's a complicated question. We have claims that we pay cash for, okay? All of those claims end up in the on page 26, that one professional service number, that $7 million number, that's a little bit more than that. And so that's where all our claims are. Okay. But then through our payroll system, we then actually have set premiums, okay? And as we charge those premiums in our payroll system each employee, then the offset to that is the revenue to our health insurance fund. I might. You guys have not, what is that?
Can I say it in a different way?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, so, you know, we have what the district pays, and then we have what else we pay for our health insurance. What we pay goes into the professional services fund, and then what the district matches us pays with their health insurance goes into the benefits. Did I understand that right or wrong? The benefits line is the benefits line.
It's close.
Okay.
I used to do something called John Madden Accounting, you guys. And it just like starts running arrows when people have like different debits and credit numbers. So that's how I teach it, but I don't know if that's like appropriate, and that's not how it works. So I was like, I don't want to write on that. But not quite.
It's not a clear cut.
Yeah, it's not as clear cut, but premiums are accounted for differently in separate funds by employee. All of our claims are in our health insurance. Just to set it that way.
That mostly makes sense to me. I think my one last question on that is like, I'm noticing from what I can tell, the benefits amounts on you know, the general fund and your grants fund and whatnot don't seem to change that much between when you were self-funded and previously when you weren't. And I think that makes sense, but can you walk me through why?
I love your asking me finances. I'm such a finance geek. I love things of questions. It's awesome. They're very good questions. So the reason why is basically our total benefit amount for our health insurance is going to be based upon two things. Number one, the number of staff that have health insurance, and the second is our premiums. Okay, so both the health insurance, the number of staff on our health insurance has been fairly the same, reasonably the same. Our premiums actually have been the same between years. So they made some adjustments from 22-23 to the 23-24 year to reduce the amount that employees were paying And then slightly increase the amount that, that the district's paying. But overall, the net is pretty much wash. And then they didn't change our premiums at all moving into this year. So that's the why.
And let me see if I'm right, I'm gonna see if this helps from a different angle. When we try to calculate, we have an employee salary, we try to calculate what's the cost of benefits. We typically take that salary, we multiply it by about 22-23%. And that's your like, all the state federal taxes, para. And then we add $10,000 per employee for health insurance. And so when I look at the numbers, I think that you're looking at and just do a rough calculation of like taking the salary amount times 22%. I think that the number we're seeing in benefits is the combined 22% para, taxes, and the 10,000 per employee. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, and as Christy said, that 10,000 per employee hasn't changed since 22-23. And I think that's what we all feel is by 25-26, probably won't. Yeah.
Stacy had run out for a second, but she asked when she comes back if she can have the next turn.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go back and ask a question. Jason mentioned like, if we join CEBT in January and then we stick with that, CEBT is giving you a current estimate of about a 10% increase for the 25-26 year. We're hearing our neighboring districts are gonna hit like a 20 to 25. Are we only getting a 10 because we're gonna take a bigger hit when we join now, or are we gonna take a hit in the 26-27 year? Why are they so willing to work with us and our neighboring districts are about to get a bigger hit?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that, Stephanie, and so, and this information came from some of the like Aspen and Parachute superintendent meetings that I have, and I'm like, hey, y'all, what are you paying? And what's happening, and what I've heard is that that's the range, and I'm hearing from Aspen RE2, Garfield 16, is that, yeah, we've been told it's going up by this, and that the range is like 10 to 25%. Now, the folks that are on that higher end will name, oh yeah, this year we had bump really big claims that are impacting what's happening. And so I think part of it is like an overall increase of cost, but then it is also tailored to that district and their usage of how CEBT sets those. You know, and I imagine, and I think this is some of that work that when I think through the like, if we end up with CEBT and we, you know, the kind of work that I'm interested in learning more about is, yes, I understand that CEBT is setting based on usage. How much are they setting based on like providers, right? That the provider at the heart of our district is very different, or the hospital at the heart of our district is not the same as the hospital in Aspen or in RE2, and they have very different costs. So I don't know all those pieces, but I know that the rates are a factor of all of that, of the cost of care and your utilization and all those pieces.
Are we gonna start about comparative to our district? And I know everybody districts are, but are we starting about comparative? Or are we starting higher and therefore they don't have to bump us that percentage?
I don't know. Okay. I don't know. And I don't know that we could, it's apples to apples based on, you know, what their plans look like.
I can answer that to
Yeah.
some level.
Yeah.
So the estimated medical inflation increase is roughly 8.5%. And so it's 10%, and that's where that number is to try to keep up with that medical inflation rate. So I think that it's fairly, I mean, from the rates, when I looked at the rates that they provided and compared that to our current costs, and then took out some of the admin that I know CEBT is cheaper on, it looked fairly like we were in line, in par with what I would have expected them to.
I'm not upset about 10% come June versus the 20-25. I'm worried we're setting ourselves up for a bigger hit 25-26. And so thinking ahead in that forecast of like, are we looking at our usage rate enough as CEBT, looking at what we did this year, so that we're not having this conversation a year in of like, oh shoot, we're now jumping up 40-45% because CEBT didn't bring us in at the right point, move us up at the right point, at a more consistent point and a more manageable point than taking another giant hit.
think. It's a really good question, you know, just looking from a high level, I think it's within reason. I don't think that it's anything that they're lowballing us or anything, I think they're coming in right where they should. So, but it just really, I think that. To our point earlier, though, we're gonna have to really find ways to really dig out on our health insurance costs in the future and find ways besides health or, you know, self-insurance to still, you know, gain traction in this field. You know, and whether or not that's Valley Alliance or what, you know, just that's something we're gonna have to look at.
Stephanie, I'm putting your question in, and I think this is a question that we can kick to CEBT a little bit, that is, I think, tell me if I'm getting this right, like. Could we better understand how CEBT sets rates, like we wanna, could they articulate the factors that they take into consideration? And then I think what I'm also hearing is that process consistent year over year? And then is there a chance that we could see incrementally much higher rates moving forward? Because of a low entry. Does that sound right? Okay.
Well, we wanna be careful that, you know, with saying a low entry point to them, because they could be increased, I would be careful about that, I'm like. Because I don't wanna increase our costs any more than we have to for this year, because we're in the middle of kind of a crisis, so I'm like, yeah.
Okay, hopefully they're not tuning in. I just said.
Yeah.
I just said because of where we start, could we see incredibly much because of where of where we start in 2024?
I guess lastly, could they, since we were with them for so many years, could they go back and review our usage rates? Do we want them to go back and review our usage rates to make sure we're in the right spot and that we're getting the right things?
I think they've already done that work in my meetings that I've had.
I have a related question. Actually, I have a couple of things. Just stop loss and stopgap are the same thing, right? I did a quick, is it the same?
Yeah.
Okay. I saw here in that we wouldn't require 100% for CEBT. It's like what's on page 5, number 18. Will employees who are currently not insured be required to be insured if we switch to CEBT? So my question is, thinking about like, I know some other questions came up about the exchange, which I'm not familiar with, but it sounds like it's an option for dependents or other insurance. How much would that impact costs per person of CEBT? Or is there an estimate? I actually don't know how many people in the district are currently not insured with the district, but I don't know if that was included in the calculation.
Yes, so, okay, so that's a great question, Stacy, thank you. It's like, what happened when we moved to the self-insurance plan for 23-24 is initially it's with CEBT, we required 100% participation in the plan, and they had a lower cost plan that those folks that were double insured take. They took that off the table that actually reduced our premiums that we were going to be receiving in as income for our self-insurance plan by about $275,000 without increasing our premiums. That's what exacerbated this issue. But since we've already made that transition, and we're not looking at requiring 100% insurance and then all of a sudden changing all that right now. It's really a matter of how we're gonna pay for it. It's like we can either pay for it through requiring 100% participation or, you know, higher employer contribution. So it's kind of two different ways of getting to the same number, I guess.
If it helps, the number of employees who had that benefit, it was very low. The percentage was very low who had the double insurance.
I think it was like 75 or so.
75 employees-ish, and out of 800, 750.
I guess to clarify my question is if accounting for those, like not having 100% insurance, is that accounted for in that table that showed like the approximate cost for one employer, family, et cetera, Or is that based on like 100% insurance?
That's incorporated. That was a specific question that they asked.
Okay.
Yep. And that's how we done, Begonia and I did into that, and how we do that. Yeah, right. Yeah, but thank you. That's a great question.
Okay. I think we don't have a question per se, they've all been asked, but I just. As we're moving through the phases, and I know we're in phase one right now, deciding on how to move forward. It's hard for me to process on how to move forward with like out knowing how it's gonna affect numbers, and I know that we don't have that right now. But I guess what is our plan as much as possible? Like, I'm just really worried about. And I can tell FAC or FAC. Here, I read it, for the FAQ, like, this is that, we're all worried about this, but I just, staff salaries, especially our classified staff, like, I just am really worried about how it will affect that, so. What process do we plan to really, as best we can, assess how that might affect salaries and benefits in the future? Cause I don't wanna talk about it next year, I feel like we need to talk about it this year.
Do you want me to talk process?
Yeah, sure.
Budget process?
Yeah.
And this is something, unfortunately, to Anna's point, is we were gonna talk about calendars and budget process, and we haven't really yet defined that budget process, but what that would normally look like is I would create an estimate based upon our FTEs for students and based upon the PPRs that are expected and all the other revenue sources, and we get an estimate. And then we look at how we budgeted last year and what, who we have in our staffing and things like that, and we get an estimate on expenses. And then we'd figure out, like, are we short on that? And then we'd have to look at, well, gee, or are we on base? I think we're probably gonna be short, given how much we've added for our health insurance this year. And then that's where the conversations are gonna start amongst the board, amongst the IVB, about how we would handle that shortfall, if any, at that point in time. Does that answer where you?
So I guess the answer is there's no way we can know how it's gonna affect.
I mean, I think we can say it will. I think we can say, like, I feel very comfortable saying, we know this year's, the 24-25 budget is gonna have a significant impact because we did not appropriately fund this plan. And that we are gonna have to cover that this year from monies that are already allocated. Or we're gonna have to be pulling from reserves, which, other than that unallocated reserve, which even that is like, oh boy, we have a little bit, it's really small, makes us really nervous. If we dip into, and Miles and I were talking about this, like, if you did link over to the board policy about their 10%, the board can override that. But then it becomes the priority to pay that back. So that just puts less money into our overall budget for 25-26, because the first thing that has to be paid back is that. So I feel like, and especially in this, what feels like we've had a year, 2 years now, I feel like of maybe missetting or really allocating funding appropriately to the cost of health insurance. We're gonna have to catch up. That's gonna be somewhat painful, I think, right now. And then I think moving forward, and then this is where I think, Stephanie, your question too is like, we're gonna have to catch up even more because we came in low. I don't think so, but I think that 25, 26, 26, 27, it's just gonna, there's more pressures on the budget. And, I think this is why I'm glad somebody asked, and I popped the actual forecast from the Colorado School Finance Project, their language from their most recent communication in there, like. And it's funny, and right, in IBB, we often talk about like new monies. I don't think there's gonna be any more money this year from the state. Like, it's not looking good at from the state budget forecast. They're talking about bringing back the BS factor, like. It's not looking good at the state level. And then we're all about to do a deep dive, if you pay attention, but to the board meetings, Kenny will definitely do a deep dive on the 9th with a demographer who's done really cool research that's been really helpful for a lot of decision making. I mean, Lindsay, we were in a meeting this afternoon talking about work at Fork, and having that demographer's forecast on student enrollment was really helpful to decision making. But as a district, his forecasts on our enrollment are not increasing. Like, it shows a slow, steady, not a cliff, But a slow, steady decline over the next decade. Nothing that, I mean, the headlines from the state, the demographic report are really good. Like the demographer is not saying we need to consolidate schools, which we're all seeing happen on the Front Range and in other communities. And the demographer is not going to say that we need to create more schools. So that's amazing. Like that is a huge, like, okay, because I think the back of my head was, oh, in the next 5 years, we're going to have to do some school consolidation planning. That's not what he's currently forecasting. But he's also not forecasting like, we're gonna get a lot of new enrollment and we're gonna pick up all these kids and we're gonna be okay. So I think that like that context paired with this doesn't make me very optimistic that we're gonna be able to continue this cadence. We've had some nice years of catch-up raises. And I worry that the medical inflation rate at 8.5 is we're gonna feel that in our health insurance, and we are not gonna see the state matching that in terms of what we're funded. And that, so I do feel like we're gonna, and to me, especially after our certified IBB last week, like to me, that is the headlines, I think, of our like mandatory check-in meeting tomorrow of like, even if you don't care about health insurance, and you just get annoyed that you're gonna have to go through, if I have to do open enrollment or I don't, that's your only imposition. Where this is going is about our overall budget, not, feeling like we're gonna have pretty intense pressures on it to sustain currently what we're doing. Because I don't see additional increase. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah, I guess I would just, as an IBB group, I would encourage us this year to really look as much as possible in the years to come, as opposed to waiting till next year to look at that, because I think. I know we don't have control of everything and we don't know everything, like what the future will look like, but as much as we can maybe have some different plans in place so that we can. Not be like building the ship while we're sitting.
And I think too, to your point, Autumn, and I know we talked a little bit about this last week, is that certified IBB has for a long time carried very closely in the negotiations around health insurance benefits, the needs of our classified team and where those salaries are set. And there are some, I don't know if we've ever codified those priorities around an individual's contributions. But am I interested in us like holding on to those things that through years of negotiations have become anchors and like in storms of saying like this really matters to us, that employees, any full-time employee is not going to have to contribute, like those kinds of priorities I think are going to be really important for us to like ground in as competing pressures hit us.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the only thing I could say, I'm trying to do this in my head, so forgive me, but like, I think, I'm looking at our general fund. Like revenues, it's roughly 95 million-ish, and I'm looking at $3 million that we've got, as far as a problem on our health insurance, as far as an increase, if we were gonna keep that employer contribution the same. So that is roughly, if you look at that, roughly 3% of the budget, if you just look at really basic numbers. So that means we'd have to grow our revenues by 3% to not have an issue, even with just that piece. So that's where Anna's coming from as far as the numbers. And mathematically minded people, I'm looking at you. That's where I'm seeing it. Yeah. Thank you.
I guess kind of on that piece, at times we've gone back and forth with our previous CFO about when like we're allocated funds for salaries, but then those positions go unfilled. That then it just gets like lumped back into the general fund or whatever. I guess I would like to know like what percentage do we have like of this reallocation back into the general fund from teacher salaries? Is that, is it even a percent, like what? Because it just feels like if that was for the bucket to pay FTE, and then it goes into the general fund, and then that fund ultimately ends up paying like for some of this snafu with the health insurance, right? It originally was for salaries. It just feels like we would end up with it coming twice, kind of, if that makes sense, because that money didn't go to pay salaries, but then now we're talking about how we're gonna have to cut potentially salaries or people. I don't know. I just wonder if there is a number for something like that, or is it just so minuscule? I don't know. We have talked about it as IBB, have we not?
Yeah, you're not alone. I mean, admin IBB's talked about it as well. It's
Uh-huh.
like, what are our agreements around that? And when, I mean, and we've talked about it a lot in terms too of like, when a position goes unfilled, when do we cut and run? When do we decide, hey, we're gonna try to staff paras instead? When do we, and I know that like Stacy's worked on this a lot, and we don't have currently like set plan on that, you know, like, and you're right, that in the past, the process has just been like, oh, that just loops back in to the general fund. So I think it's a fair question. I don't know the scope of it. I mean, I think I hear from our teachers and our administrators that like feel the scope of it when that position ever gets filled and you're asked to cross cover, you're asked to pick up 35 kids in a classroom, 40 kids, you know, or we do whatever we do to get by. So that's a great question, Alicia, and I don't know that we fully, it was one of those, I'll be honest, that last year, the school resource allocation committee grappled with that, and it was on our list of like, let's solve this, because this needs to be solved, and a lot of our IBB teams, I'm looking at you, Heather, because I know we did this work, and this was one of the questions admin brought too, was like, yeah, how do we do that? Because, you know, is there a point at which we stop trying to hire and we pivot? Did we lose that? You know, admin are often asking like, do we lose the ability to flex that? If we find somebody different, or can we use it for stipends, or, you know, I know we've also, in my limited time with certified IBB, grappled with like, is there a number at which we say when you pick up this many more kids, that's money? Do you know what I mean? Like there's an offset. I don't know that, I don't think we got to an answer, I think, with that yet.
Can I know one thing too, is that now with this issue going on in our low fund balance, we have to be really careful as well as considering, you know, like where that money's gonna come from if our fund balance dips below the minimum and we're at that point. And what if there's if that recession it hits, then usually you don't have those vacancies. I mean, so it can really turn around really quick on you when you start to get into a recession situation, especially with a very low fund balance, that's gonna be a real touchy point. I would, you know, as a CFO, I would feel more comfortable with recycling that money in the middle of the year if I knew we had a solid fund balance. But you know, like that's gonna be another compounding situation this year with that, just to consider. I know that there's gonna be a lot of talks around that, but yeah, it just makes it a little bit more difficult with this current situation.
And then I have another question about the supplemental budget. I think it's on page 6, question 7. And you alluded to this with like needing to get it passed by the board or whatever for additional costs. I just wanted to know, like, is it just gonna be a line item with the changes, possibly with that stop loss insurance? Or is that its own supplemental budget? Like, will that be wrapped into one big piece that you take to the board and say, this needs to account for the supplemental budget for the changes in the health insurance, or is it going to be its own? Again, just for transparency's sake, I guess I want to know, is that two separate things? Are they overlapping? Like,
I'd see it as one and the same, conversation, but there would be two parts to that conversation. One is the recommendation around that way, and the other one is how we're gonna pay for that and what our budget's gonna need to change to, and that it does have to be a legally approved budget per CDE guidelines. And so we've already missed, and it's a little more complicated because we should have done a supplemental budget for 23-24, and it's already too late because you have to do that by January. So we'll probably do one for 24-25 instead, if that makes sense.
and all that kind of stuff will just be included in it as like a line item. Or it will be done separately. I guess that's kind of where I'm like, how often do you Cause it sounds like you've already had to do some supplemental budget, like you said with like GSHS, you had to do a supplemental budget for that to be approved to be a part of our current budget. I'm just curious, will all of this be individual things being approved by the board, or will it all just fit into this supplemental budget for additional funds for what's going on with the health insurance?
Well, I guess that's something we're gonna have to define if we wanna do one or.
Can I ask a quick question? My understanding was that supplemental budget is like what we did in September, where it's like an addendum. Like we've talked about with our contract of having like an MOU, right, like a little lagging. So the supplemental will be its own thing, the way we presented it, but I think. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think what we need to do by January, isn't that an amended budget, which is actually the holistic look at the whole thing? And I think that that's maybe to what you're naming, Alicia.
Yeah.
Is it just where we would see the whole thing and we'd have to pull out in the memo or in the presentation, here are the 20 things that are different? Am I right or am I off there?
Yeah,
Is there a distinction in those supplemental versus amended?
There is no
Okay.
distinction.
Okay.
They're one and the same, but it's just a matter of how we manage that. It is like there's a lot of school districts that I know and boards that I know that wanna see one supplemental budget. You know, in January for everything that they know, and then there's others that really like, hey, as we're going along, we really would appreciate to know, understand.
Yeah.
You know, things as we're moving forward, and I think that this year, given that there's some pretty. You know, extraordinary items, that it might behoove us to just have that level of transparency and do multiple supplemental budgets, is what I've heard in board meetings that the board has wanted. But that's not what we normally do. Usually we would do like a January. And then just because of, you know, efficiency, we want to make sure we're being efficient.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, sorry, one more question to bring up what Autumn brought up. And it's more of us as certified IBB. So what are our plans in the future after this gets kind of worked out? For how we are going to discuss the current like budget for 2024 and /25, and then moving forward as an IBB plan, like what is our plan of attack for addressing the elephant in the room, which is that there are obviously gonna be cuts, and we just need to anticipate, we need to come up with a unified approach for how we're communicating this with staff. Also, us being in our role to communicate with our staff on if there is a like categorical, like these are where I would want the funds to go. Like if you're, like you were saying, we're gonna do with the needing to come up with the additional funds that you'll bring it to the board and they'll rank order it or whatever. It's kind of similar for us in our role with moving forward on recommendations about our budget, not just for this year, but moving forward, right? So I just want to know, like, because we didn't really get there in our last IBB meeting, and I know that this is the big elephant in the room, and I appreciate that we're doing this, but I feel like we cannot leave today without like a forward, like where we're going with this, so that it's very clear that we have a plan in place. So we're not just like, oh, we'll deal with this later. Cause that just doesn't feel, it feels like that's maybe why we ended up where we are right now, which is that we just push things into later, and the later is now, and now we can't go back in time, so.
I appreciate that, Alicia, and I, you know, I'm very conscious of the moment in which we were having these conversations last year. And we're told, we don't need to touch health insurance, like it came up, right? And we were like, well, do we need to adjust premiums? Are premiums going up? We've all lived in worlds where they go up every year. No, they don't have to, we're good. And we're all like, oh, interesting, okay, cool, keep rolling. And we know now a lot more. Here's my sense, and Christy, jump in. We're still untangling 23-24. And then we have to get to 20, so we're trying to like clean up 23-24, package it, make sure we're clear, make sure everything we rolled over the 24-25 is corrected or correct. that we're basing our current budget off of real numbers. That work will be finalized with the audit, although the team is doing a lot of that now. And so once we have that work done, then I feel like it's time for Christy and I and as a team to be able to wrap our heads more, although Christy's already done this work a bit and trying to get more of it into 24, 25. Where are we right now? And that's gonna be that analysis that we have to do in order to get into phase 2 decision making. Like, where is the 24, 25 budget? How do we recover or cover the losses for health insurance in 24, 25? And part of the 24, 25 conversation is about the backwards, right? Planning for raises for certified in 24, 25, because classified already got theirs, certified hasn't, right? And so then it's wrapping our heads around the 24, 25. How do we offset all these losses? Great. Where's that budget? What do we have to work with IBB raises for 24, 25 that are due? And that funding should be there, the 24, 25 budget, it's there. It hasn't been on our list, like, this is an area that will cut, you know what I mean? Like, that's not gonna, we're looking, that list of 10 for phase 2 is elsewhere. So my best thinking is that we would go through phase 2, have a good sense that we have a plan of where we can allocate, you know, that final potential maximum risk for 24, 25 is this number. Great, here's how we're gonna allocate that. Great, now we understand 24, 25 budget, here's what we have to work with, and the traditional way we kind of do with, great, what are the priorities for certified IBB in terms of salaries and where we want to offset. And I think we will, we will then be having those conversations of the forecast. What are we seeing 25, 26?
Yeah.
Right, in terms of like, sure, what can we do backwards, but what do we need to move forwards? Especially when it comes to premiums. And so my sense is that that's kind of the sequencing that's gonna have to happen to get through all of that.
Do you have a rough estimate then of like, so the audit you said would be happening by December, so then the conversations you guys could have independent of us would be maybe like in January, so then we could start discussing 24, 25 and like February maybe, I don't know, I'm just kind of like forward thinking of where we're gonna be, where we're going.
Yep. Let me try and answer, and then Christy, you can like be like, yeah, you're crazy. My sense is that by the end of December, we should have our heads wrapped around the audit, so where 23, 24 landed. We will know our plan of how we're gonna cover health insurance losses for 24, 25. And we should be able to then tackle, great, where are we at with certified raises? And what do we have to work with? And then we start tackling that. And so I do think that your timeline, like, yeah, like hopefully by the end of January, we have that.
Yes,
That will need to be, yeah, I mean, we have to.
Okay.
Yeah, we gotta get to 25, 26.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's been the challenge is like, you know, and from a board perspective too, and from an IBB perspective as well, is just, you know, what are our next steps? And, you know, we got so many different challenges and, you know, things that we really want to move forward with finance. And, you know, we've got this limitation of somebody that's new that, you know, and we've got limited staff and like, well, what are our priorities now that we've got all these different challenges in the department? And so what we've decided to do is to update the board every board meeting with the CFO report as well. That we're starting. So that's a really great way for you guys to check in on our work, on where we're at and what our next steps are.
Okay.
And we're moving as fast as we possibly can. And you know, I feel good with the progress already, but I know it's not fast enough. No matter how fast I can go, it's not fast enough, but I have that kind of pace as I'm trying to pace set the team. If that's fair. So, but.
Okay, sorry to ask so many questions.
No, that's what it's really good questions.
So I have 3 questions or wonderings. The first one is on page 4, number 12, and this is back in regard to other options for dependents. And I agree with Stacy, I'm not familiar what the exchange is, but my wondering is, I had read that a family premium is currently $1,900 and could potentially be almost $2,900 or almost $2,700. So that's almost, you know, 1,800 or an $800 increase. And so I'm wondering if not only would that be more cost effective for the district to, and I know the answer says we don't have the internal resources, you know, yet, but would it be, would that be a good investment to have information if that would be a huge cost savings to employees and to the district? Like, I don't know, I'm just wondering, because that is a huge increase, and I do know people that have that family plan, that is something that is like, wow, that's a lot per month, right? And if there is better options out there, and if that would be helpful. So that was just my one wondering.
Can we answer that?
Yeah.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but our current costs for family plans have been kept low based on decisions by, I believe, our team saying we should not be paying employee shouldn't pay the full cost of the differential between the individual and the family. And so what I believe is that the reason they've been kept low is because we've decided to invest, to increase the employer contribution program. That. And so, I mean, people are comparing those, it's not quite apples to apples, like, we're actually contributing, I don't know if that's right.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
My understanding of why, when you look, I'm on the slides in my head, thinking of the columns of our current plan, think CEBT, and it's a huge jump is what Heather's naming when you look at the family going across.
Yeah.
My understanding was that we were contributing to the family plans, keep them low.
That's what it's.
And so when we look at that jump, it's because we've held that current payment lower. So I don't, you know, if we kept doing that, maybe the jump wouldn't be quite as much.
Right.
So I didn't name that piece of part of why it was like, whoa, because
That's helpful. And then I guess in addition to that, would it be helpful to provide other options for independence instead of doing the family plan, right? Like that, I just.
Yeah.
To encourage people to not have families on our plan because we are contributing additional money to family plans.
Well, or is there a
Beyond
better, is there a different, is there
Yeah,
an
is
additional
it-
option?
That would also be cheaper for families, potentially.
Yeah,
Just
Cheaper for
wondering.
families and cheaper for us.
yeah, I don't know, I think that is probably a question worth us asking like a exchange navigator, because what I'm hearing you say, Heather, is like. You know, especially or maybe those of us who have kids that are not in that every 6 months, well, child check kind of world. And they're not using a lot, then is there a higher deductible plan for dependents that. For kids that are launched or something?
Right, and I just know, like, yeah, the general public, right, we also don't have that knowledge, or, you know, it's
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean, like, so anyway, just a wonder.
Yeah, I thought, yeah.
The second one was, I know in the past, there's been a lot of talk about that we are in a resort area, and that drives up our insurance costs significantly. I remember at one point, the state was talking about like reallocating, or there was some talk about how that could be drawn lines a little different. Just wondering if there's been any, I don't know, like exploration, or is it just that like Think Health and CEBT is like, nope, this is just your rates based off of usage and I know the high cost of the hospital, but anyway, I just, was wondering about that. Is that still playing into the factors?
You know, the only thing that I've seen play into the estimates for both Think Health as well as CEBT is our usage rate.
Okay.
And so, you know, I know that they're interrelated, but it's always based on the usage. That's what they estimate the losses based on and things.
Okay, I was just trying to think like, is there anything else that we can reduce? And then my last, and this is just a general wondering, because we switched from CEBT and went to Think Health, do you still feel like we've got a good relationship with CEBT? Are they being, you know, open and not biased with like feeling like we broke up or something? You know, I just want to make sure our relationship is healthy with them, because I think that can also, I know in the world of business, it could be a factor.
I've had a long-standing relationship with CBT for over 20 years.
Okay.
And so we've looked at self-insurance and, you know, in other areas and municipalities and all this kind of stuff, but I know these guys really well and, we have really good relationships. And, also, they just come, I mean, what they've indicated to us is we've told them is we can't promise you guys we're gonna move with you or not. We wanna get an estimate at this point in time because we're in a tough spot. And so there's not even really any, you know, onus that, oh, you better move with us, otherwise we're never gonna talk to you again, kind of thing. I think that they're really empathetic of the situation we're in right now, and their team has done a lot to really just try to help us to provide us information. Yeah, so I think that it's been working really well. So.
I appreciate that they're a nonprofit also. I thought that was helpful information and, you know, I think that's good. I appreciate that, but thanks, those are just, yeah.
I know the actuary hasn't started yet, but, I'm wondering how many of our 800 employees approximately, have someone else on their insurance? Either a spouse or, you know,
Good question. We do have that breakdown, that number, I don't know by memory, but. I would venture that over 65% of our employees actually are solo. Applying, so majority of our employees have their dependents in another plan.
about 1/3.
Well, and I think we had a question that we needed to follow up on related to that exact question. So like, can we see a breakdown of how many people are actually on each plan? So
we have those numbers.
we need to just link, we need to link them either in the slide deck. I'll add, but it would answer your question. And I think so I'll add it at the bottom, because it doesn't sound like we've answered it.
All these complications, the run out costs, aside from the premiums and just the hassles of switching yourself over are multiplied by the number of people you have on the plan. Kind of like the scale factor. Shout out to 8th grade math. We've been working on that in math class. So I think like my opinion is, just me is one thing, but somebody who's got 3 or 4 people on their plan is a different.
Okay, so I've got the numbers.
You got it?
Yeah. So I'm just trying to see if this is, for PPO 7. There is 452 people that are employees that are employee only. Employee plus spouse is only 13, and then there's employee plus children is 51. And employee plus family is 42. And that's just for our PPO 7 plan.
Wait. Sorry, how many were family?
42.
Okay.
Yeah, and for a total of 58. And then this is based on current numbers. This fluctuates because, you know, people, it ebbs and flows a lot. But generally, I mean, the going is quite right is mostly that, I mean, the vast majority is single. So PPO 6, we have 57 that are single, 2 as employee plus spouse, 6 as employee plus children, and 5 that are employee plus family.
What was the employee only on PPO 6?
57.
57 employee plus spouse on PPO 6
is 2.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then HDHP employee only is 26. Employee plus spouse is 2. 0 employee plus children and 1 employee plus family. That doesn't include vacated positions because those are not included. That's why, you know, it's like the amount of budgeted positions are a little bit lower than that, but yeah.
So I've got them all in FAQs right now, PT. Great, yes. Okay. Anything else?
At the meeting last week, I asked about the dental insurance, and I thought you said that it would likely be changing. But then I was looking through the FAQs, and it looks like someone asked that question, and the answer was that that dental and vision would stay the same. So is that?
That's potentially, so it can change, this is subject to change, because we're still looking at that with our actuary. We have the ability to keep that the same or to change it at this point in time. And it's gonna depend on, you know, cost and plus, you know, our ability to shift everything that quickly for full open enrollment, kind of thing, so there are some moving parts around that. Okay, so we could see it either way.
Will we know by the time that we make the recommendation to the board, whether that would be part of the recommendation or not?
Yeah.
I mean, is like funding for those things, was that also underestimated? Or are they kind of their own separate thing?
It's really packaged with the health insurance, we haven't pieced that out, but usually your dental and vision are not problematic.
Usually self-insured for dental, right, like.
Yeah,
Like individual.
yeah,
But
it could have
the school
been,
district send the check to the dentist or just whoever it is.
No, it's to us still, it's supposed to be sending to us.
I'm sorry.
I don't have clarity on the, yeah, like, is it dental self-insured or is that like a more of a managed plan?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question, okay, we'll have to get back.
I guess it,
Yeah,
I guess I would just be concerned, like if they are. You said, I heard you say that they were packaged. So if they're packaged, they're packaged. If you do some more research and find out that. You don't need to necessarily touch those things. I just know that people like the new dental. They like MetLife over Delta, is what I've heard. The dentist likes, every time I go to the dentist is like, yeah, MetLife pays us right away. They're a really good company to work with. So that would just be one thing. I wouldn't want the dental and the vision to be swept up into this, maybe potentially unnecessarily, if those. You know, if there wasn't also like a financial impact with what you're saying happened here with the budgeting for that, but if it's a package deal, I'm just curious to know more about that.
Now I am too.
Well, I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, for sure.
I added those other to today's.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, you got anything?
No.
I know we're over time. I'd love to make sure we can answer Megan's question. So can we go with her questions? Is everybody okay to hang in there?
How many questions?
Oh, who else? Oh,
Yeah.
I think it's. All right, go for it, Megan.
She says she's good.
Oh, you're good, okay. How about any other burning questions that you feel like are clarifying questions, or what did we not cover that at least we could put on the to-do list? Is there anything else at this moment that's?
What's next steps with this group?
Yeah, I agree.
Good question. Okay, that's a great question. Yeah, let's talk about where we are and where we go. So we have a staff Q&A Thursday morning, a virtual one. We have a staff Q&A Monday the 7th in the afternoon. We have certified IBB meeting on Wednesday, October 9th. In terms, so we will continue to answer questions and respond to follow up. I do hope that everyone has access to the Google form feedback so that you can see all of that. That was, and it's 86, so depending on last time you read it. So that's important, and I think our next step is to, you know, what I will communicate when we have tomorrow afternoon, where, again, what I heard from certified IVB was that what's really important to communicate is the impacts, and we really want people to not get caught off guard. If and when a decision is made and they suddenly have to go through open enrollment at a time they didn't expect to, or they suddenly are told that there aren't gonna be staff salary increases in 26, 27, that they're not saying, wait, when did this happen? So part of my messaging tomorrow is like, just really urging everybody to like, please lean in, please review this, please talk to your reps. So that you keep up with what's happening. So that's gonna be my messaging tomorrow. And then I think we continue to sift through and we'll all come back together as certified IVB on the 9th. To continue to ask questions, and I think check in at where we are. We can do absolutely be doing additional updates if we've got anything more refined at that time. But I think it's to go and see if we can gauge our ability to reach a consensus recommendation at that time. And if we feel like we need more information before doing that, we can pause and see if we can get a plan to get that, or if we feel like we're not gonna get there, that is also really important information. So I think that's where, does that sound right to everybody? I mean, that was kind of our co-construction of this.
I asked, this may be something that just isn't possible, but what I heard over and over, and what I read over and over is the impacts of staff. Is there any way that Christy could do a hypothetical, if you make this much money and we switch to CEBT, this is likely what your salary might be in the 25, 26, so people can see in actuality, is there any chance?
But the
of
only
that?
difference would be in your premium, right? Like that, the premium cost goes up.
Yeah,
That's
but
gonna be negotiated. That's the only thing.
Okay.
Is like, we've gotta look at what the employee contribution and employer contribution are. And without those numbers and without more conversation with the health insurance committee and IBBs, I won't have the figures to be able to determine that. And then, you know, then how that impacts salary too. It's just like, yeah, I already did that information.
could we possibly though, with like the forecast or predictions, I know the actuary is more about like insurance claims, but like utilizing this idea of prediction to make it so that we could maybe offset it with 24, 25 moving to 25, 26, you know what I mean? Like, so it's not like, oh, we're gonna give this great raise this year, but then next year we're gonna cut like 20 people and you're not gonna get a raise at all, and everybody has rates that are going way up. Like, so I think we just need more of a like, I don't know, just like a rough estimate to make recommendations with budgets moving forward. And then also we can have those conversations with people at our schools. Because right now I feel kind of like flat-footed, like I can't really offer a whole lot more than you guys have.
I think what's hard about that, I wish we could. I think what's hard about that is why I appreciate the language, but it's like frustrating every time I look at this. If you go down to that state forecast on page 9, you know, where they say the legislative I'm halfway through. The legislative council staff indicated that having enrollment local, they won't have good information for K-12 funding until December. You know, so much for us depends on that. So it's hard to piece it together because we just don't have all the pieces in place. Yeah.
I guess I'm comfortable with that part of it personally, because we go into every year expecting an increase in insurance. 25 years now, that's been the case.
Yeah, but to make up for like a big draw from our general fund, we do not go into that every year. So yeah, I agree, there's that little fudge factor that we always have to deal with insurance, right?
I guess there's an expectation that insurance is gonna go up.
Yeah.
And last year when it didn't, that was the anomaly.
Which now we know why. Yeah.
I mean, I can't name it, and it's hard to put a number on, but I think we can absolutely commit to making sure that you all see what we see, and that you are brought along, and that we make the time to talk through this, to explain what we're looking at, to share the forecast, to share those pieces in a way, so that we feel like we're looking at it together. You know, that I can commit to, that like, let's work through this together, in a more transparent, clear way. I just don't know where it's gonna land. I mean, I'm not optimistic, but
What was the 16th? What information are you guys getting on the 16th again?
I think that what the 16th was isn't a hope. Well, we were trying to work backwards with the actuarial consultants, trying to put kind of like a finalized report for us.
Okay.
And we were trying to say like, hey, we actually can't have that on the 23rd. Do you know what I mean? Like, and we need to give them time. And then we need to give us time. And so that is what we're hoping to target for some more information from them on, you know, and again, I don't know that it'll be incredibly earth shattering or new information, just because of when Christy has explained where we are and what we're estimating, what we're seeing, we're hearing from the lawyers and the actuarial consultants is like, your estimations are reasonable and legitimate, like that is a really reasonable way to estimate that. And then they just say, we're gonna go even more targeted. So that's the report that we need to get on the 16th.
And then the 23rd is gonna be that recommendation to the board on which way we're gonna. So there's gonna be, you know, that's gonna be another really important way.
I was just asking him at the 16th because that's after our recommendation on the 9th. So I wanted to know like, how important is that for us to be able to give our recommendation? So if you're saying no, it's pretty much what we're already giving, then that's fine too.
You know, I think the 9th is gonna be a good cadence, so because we meet with them every Monday, and so we will meet on the 7th and be able to understand better, like, where are you at? Are you finding, you know, are you veering very differently from where we think we are? And so I think by the 9th, we will be able to talk through that with certified, we also have classified IBB that day, so with both classified and certified IBB on the 9th. You know, here's the most recent update from that team. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry,
No.
I just saw a difference in dates there.
Yeah. I know we're past time. Just want to end with a ton of appreciation for all of you and this time investment and just in time invested on this work. And you all have 1,000 other things to be doing, and I really wish we were all focusing more on our kids right now. And I'm really sorry that we're in this place. There is no one I would rather be in it with than all of you, and I'm also really sorry for being here. And I look forward to continuing to implement the changes that make sure that we do not end up here. Okay, let's wrap. Please keep the questions coming. Thank you.
The other day I was like, I mean, my brain was full by like an hour live or something, and I was like, there was not like 4 hours to it, right? And I was trying so hard to follow everything that was being presented so that I could understand it, but it's hard to understand all of it. Because it's like you have to be like you have to be like
See that from her? You're like.
I need a lot more people when I was sad.
Yeah, that's what I thought.